Over the next half an hour, I'm going to take you on a journey across Malta's ancient rockscape. We'll delve into theories from the academic to the anomalous, and we'll try to answer a simple but powerful question. Who made these tracks, and what kind of world were they living in when they did? You can't smell it, but there's a real distinct smell of manure in the air. But I'm at this beautiful point in the island where I'm standing on effectively what is limestone. Now you might remember my video from Poolnaboom in Ireland where I show the Neolithic civilization that carved out the memorial like a time portal to the dead. Now in a way this is kind of similar. This dates back millions and millions of years, this limestone. You know, limestone is effectively the old coral reefs that have been pushed up from thousands of years. I can show you this by the fact that this is what an old coral reef kind of looks like, but pushed up, and it looks like this may have been used as this was a quarry, because you can see things have been cut out. I don't think these are walls, but I could be wrong. The fact that there's a quarry going on over in this direction over here tells me actively still doing it, but this looks like an ancient quarry, and it's really interesting in terms of the organic matter that we find around here. Everything from the weeds to, let's have a look what we see. Look at this. It's like a Mr. Miyagi's wet dream, all these kind of little plants that look like little bonsai trees. See that? Almost like a little bonsai. Not many people come up here, I don't think. Gives you a really nice view of the island. This little point is a really perfect place to sort of look on at Vidala Palace in the distance over there. I don't know if you can see it, Vidala Palace just over there. Can you see that? I'm not sure. Temporarily closed, I can't enter it, but this is a really phenomenally beautiful little place. But I got to be careful not to trip over. I'm going to head back to my little car, go find some giants. Malta has long been called Land of the Giants, not because of myths whispered in taverns, but because of the staggering mysteries carved into the very bedrock that I stand on today. From temples that are older than some of the pyramids to megaliths weighing tons, the island bears scars of a past that modern archaeology still struggles to explain. Chief among these enigmas are the cart ruts, deep parallel grooves that cut into the limestone, defying logic, technology, and time. Were they ancient roads, ritual tracks, or footprints of something much larger? Over the course of this series, so click that subscribe button, we're journeying across Malta and Gozo, following the trail of these strange, ancient markings in search of answers and perhaps signs that giants once walked this land. You get some pretty funny things on Google Maps, and sometimes you don't expect to see these things, but when you're sort of scouring around, people sort of drop little reviews on what to see. There's only 2 reviews on this thing on Google Maps, but I imagine there's going to be many more in the days, the months, the years to go by, as long as this lasts, and I hope it does last. This is a giant asparagus. Imagine that, your mother says, just eat that asparagus and then you can leave the table. Got to try and eat that thing. Now obviously because it's grown a little bit wild, it doesn't look quite your typical asparagus, but trust me, I just smelt it. That's an asparagus, and it's a giant one. Have you ever seen a giant asparagus? This being the land of the giants, we have giant asparagus. Our first clue that giants roam this land, or at least once roamed this land. I'm excited. There are places on this planet that quietly defy explanation. Places that don't shout for attention, but instead whisper mysteries to those willing to listen. Today I'm standing among one of those places. These aren't modern trenches, they're not war remnants or quarry scars. These are called cart ruts, and they cover the Maltese landscape like an ancient riddle carved in stone. They snake across the bedrock, dipping into valleys, crisscrossing each other, some ending abruptly, others quite literally disappearing into the sea. The most famous of these sites is right here, at a place locals call Mislagar El Kabir, but archaeologists nicknamed it Clapham Junction because, well, look around, it resembles a railway yard from a forgotten age. Some call them Bronze Age tracks, others say they're Roman. But what if we're asking the wrong questions? What if these tracks are older than we dare admit? Graham Hancock,
author, explorer, has suggested something bold, that these aren't merely the worn parts of ancient wagons, but the relics of pre-Ice Age civilization, one wiped out by a cataclysm 12,000 years ago. Now before you scoff, ask yourself this: why do some of these ruts disappear underwater? Divers have followed them into the sea, tracks found submerged at depths too great to explain by a few thousand years of erosion. Now if that's true, it means they were made when sea levels were drastically lower, perhaps during the last ice age. What is the mainstream explanation, I'm sure you're asking? Well, they claim that these grooves were formed by carts or sleds, hauling stone across Malta's soft limestone bedrock, but with enough use over time, the wheels or the runners etched the tracks we see today. But some of these ruts are half a meter deep. If that's the case, were these people dragging stone blocks back and forth in exactly the same path for hundreds of years? Or were these tracks engineered, deliberately carved into the landscape by people we've long forgotten? The truth is, we don't know, and that's what makes it so fascinating. There's no chisel marks, no tool signatures, no inscriptions left behind to tell us who passed this way. Just parallel grooves, like scars in stones, stretching towards the unknown.
Of course there's going to be little caves down here, because just like in Ireland where you have the dolmen, limestone generally has this ability to carve out natural caves. So there's cave entry systems. But what's fascinating is those track lines are 12 inches exactly. I'm size 12, UK 12, that's US 13 feet. Each track is that size. Now, some of them you could explain, well, that's just erosion, but it's the fact that they do consistently look like cart lines. I mean, just look at it from this angle. That is a road or a track. There's no getting your head around that. That is a track without a shadow of a doubt. And these tracks are all over the island. What went on in the civilization that we are taught? If you're into ancient civilization theory, there are some great books on this. Looks like a mini giant asparagus, but it's not. It's a weed. It's a weed. I feel a bit like Tim Pool, not taking my hat off, but it's actually chillier than it looks. It's sunny, but it's chilly. Hence the reason I got my hat on. But just down here, this is where the cave underground network, right below me, lots and lots of caves. This bit is obviously subsided. It allows us some sort of access entry points. You can head down these cliffs, enter the caves. And it's like a whole underground system of just cave networks under this limestone area. It makes you wonder. A lot of stories linked to this part of the world that go back thousands of years. Really fascinating part of the world. On Google Maps, this area is known as Clapham Junction. A little bit strange in the fact that it's supposed to indicate all of these tracks coming together, just like Clapham Junction station in London. It's strange because that's where I started my journey, getting the train from Clapham Junction to Gatwick Airport, flying to Malta to basically come see these. So I guess kind of fitting, I went from one Clapham Junction to another Clapham Junction. This one is less busy, this one is less scary. No giants in sight.
Just below the mysterious tracks of Clapham Junction lies another world entirely. A world carved into stone, hidden from the sun, and steeped in stories. This is Gar il Kibir, otherwise known as the Big Cave. For centuries, this network of natural caverns wasn't just a shelter, it was a home. At one time, up to 150 people lived in these caves, entire families, known as the Troglodytes.
Back into time, when the only people that existed were troglodytes.
Living in the shadows of Malta's ancient limestone. They carved out rooms, built stone walls, and even etched out chapels within the rock. You can see the remains, the outlines of what once might have been bedrooms, kitchens, or places of prayer. It's humbling, really, to think of a life lived like this, not as an act of desperation, but as a way of life. These weren't hermits, they were workers, farmers, families, children were born here, meals were shared here. And yet today, it's silent, forgotten by most. In 1835, the British authorities evicted the last cave dwellers, citing concerns about hygiene and disease. The community was forced out, and the caves slowly fell into disuse, and then obscurity.
it goes totally dark. The camera actually picks up the light really well. Better than my eyes. I find myself using my camera to navigate more than my actual eyes. So there we go, look at this. So the troglodytes would have lived in here.
I can't help but feel something when I walk through here. Above us, the ruts of a lost civilization. Below, the echo of lives carved out of stone. Two histories separated by thousands of years, yet both etched in the same rugged hilltop. It made me wonder how many more layers of forgotten life lie beneath our feet.
Alright, so here we are, Clapham Junction, Malta, not the one in London, that's for sure. Now what we've seen here is truly mysterious. Experts aren't even sure who made these carved lines. It's not natural erosion, these carved lines. They were used possibly for transporting Neolithic stones, possibly for transporting other things. No wheeled vehicles were ever found. Were they sleds? Irrigation channels maybe? I don't think they were irrigation channels because they crisscross multiple depths. But they are fascinating, and what is also fascinating, I'm the only one here. No one else is here. I've been here for a good hour or two, probably an hour and a half, and nobody else is in the vicinity. It's just myself, my car parked on the edge, and no one else. You have to forgive me, I am super sick. I had food poisoning. I've missed many days of action simply because I've just been incapable of doing anything. But we continue. Crazy names on Google Maps. This place is called Sunset Wild Place. Now obviously probably the best time to be here is when the sunset's happening, but you can see why that would be. You sit here on the cliffs, take it all in, watch the sun sort of dip into the ocean while the radio telecommunications device that is just over there listens to us all, or listens to, who are they listening to? Who knows? But more importantly, the sun. What a beautiful, beautiful spot. Maybe Google isn't that loved on Malta, because I have to say, looking at things on Google Maps just to see what the things are, doesn't really tell you much, because there's an island over there called Philippa. Now you think, okay, what do the reviews say about Philippa? So normally I would click on the reviews. 0 reviews for Philippa, and the little speck that's next to it. The little speck next to it is called Philoletta, so I guess a small Philippa. Now, thank God we have other things other than Google, because I just had to look this up. And then I was like, that place, because it's actually quite significant, but it really is remarkable. There's no update on Google Maps. Google's not really that accurate on Malta. The roads that should be there, Google doesn't know they're there. But anyway, Philippa, it was an island used by the Phoenicians, and then later St. John the Baptist basically forbid anyone from going to the island, saying it was sacred. Well, it remained sacred for a very, very long time, until the Brits came along. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I can't help what some of my ancestors did. They did great things.
And we win by the grace of God!
And they did some questionable things.
Education, education, education.
God, I hate that guy.
But mostly great things. One of the great things was they thought, there's nothing really going on that island over there. No one's there. We've got a base here, a naval base. Perfect place from this sort of lookout point and down there to use it for target practice. So basically, they set off artillery after artillery at that island, going boom, 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 smashing that island to pieces. You could say it's seen better days. It wasn't for all the artillery that's pretty much destroyed that island. It's the elements that have destroyed that island. And just like all of this area made of limestone, poor little island. But now, thankfully, since 1980, It's been given respite. It is now a nature reserve, and nobody is allowed to go there again. One, because it's pretty damn dangerous with all the unexploded artillery shells that could be there, but there's a rare little bird there. So the rare little bird is okay to be there. What is the rare little bird called? It's called the European storm petrel, lives there. Maybe that's the bird I can hear in the distance. So quite a remarkable little point. And I love the fact that during off-peak season it's so bloody quiet here. It's so quiet. Just to give you some perspective, this is another set of cart tracks. Notice the same depth, and we're quite a fair distance from where we were earlier with the cart tracks. That quarry is where the cave system is. I don't know if you can see the quarry over there. See that over there? We're a fair distance. We have these tracks all over the island. Who knows how many thousands of years these tracks go back to, but another example of them. Much further away from the original cart tracks we saw at the beginning of this video, we're now further in, more isolated part of the island where apparently there's some more cart tracks. So we're going to go have a look over here. I vision they're exactly the same, but isn't it marvellous just trying to document these things? Because when I went looking for information, yeah, I found some bits and pieces, but not enough.
Now, mainstream archaeologists date most of these tracks to the Bronze Age or Classical period. So we're talking 2000 to 7000 BC, though some claim they could be earlier. They suggest the ruts were used to haul stone from quarries to construction sites for temples, walls or ports. And it's true, many rut networks do run right alongside ancient quarries. But even that raises questions. Why carve paths into bedrock itself? Wouldn't worn wooden roads or dirt tracks have worked just as well? And where are the tools? Where are the cart remnants? Where are the oxen bones or the signs of infrastructure that usually accompany ancient industrial work? The answer, we don't really have them. What we do have are the grooves, and that's about it. Some researchers even believe that what we're seeing here are generations of ruts, built one on top of another over centuries. And that's why they intersect and tangle, because they weren't made all at once. But if that's the case, who kept using the same spot over and over again for centuries? Was this some kind of sacred corridor, a temple transport zone? Or were these grooves the byproduct of a much more advanced or very different kind of movement? Because here's the thing that nags me. If your cartwheels are fixed, how do you follow the tracks on such uneven terrain without snapping an axle? Some of these ruts run up and down steep slopes through rocky terrain where even a modern 4x4 might hesitate. So were they wheeled vehicles at all, or were they sleds or something else entirely? What if we're looking at this all wrong? What if we're not seeing scars of Bronze Age farmers, but the remnants of something far older? Something we haven't yet properly understood. And that brings us the deeper mystery, the sea. Because across Malta and even across its shores, there are cart ruts that don't just stop, they vanish beneath the waves.
What's obvious, they're not all the same. Note, remember how big my feet were against this. Look at this. So this is smaller. Yeah, you might laugh at my silly feet. That is smaller. So these seem to be half the thickness.
Divers off the coast of St George's Bay and other sites have discovered what appear to be the same kinds of parallel grooves, submerged underwater. Some of these are just a few meters below the surface, others much deeper, which raises a serious question. Were these cart ruts made at a time when Malta's shoreline was somewhere else entirely? At the end of the last ice age, around 12,000 years ago, sea levels were over 100 meters lower than they are today. Malta wasn't a small island, it was part of a much larger landmass, possibly connected to Sicily, a high plateau in a very vast Mediterranean plain. If these tracks really are underwater, then they must predate sea level rise, which would make them at least 10,000 years old. That's thousands of years older than the Bronze Age, and earlier than the earliest temples we know of on Malta. Enter Graham Hancock. In his book, Underworld, and more recently the Netflix series Ancient Apocalypse, Hancock makes the bold claim that sites like this are evidence of a lost Ice Age civilization, one capable of engineering, of astronomy, of building, and maybe even global seafaring. He points to the Ruts as a clue, a remnant of a pre-cataclysmic world, one destroyed by a global flood and later buried under layers of time and water. In that theory, these weren't worn down by generations of farmers. They were built deliberately, engineered. Maybe not for carts, maybe not for anything we can even imagine, but what were they used for? Transport? Ritual? Something more technological? Some researchers have suggested that the ruts weren't simply made by carts at all, but by sleds guided in rock-carved grooves, like a primitive railway. Others go even further, proposing anti-gravity crafts, magnetic probe propulsion, or energy distribution systems. I'm not saying I believe all of that, but I am saying the more time you spend out here walking these tracks, the more you realize how little we truly understand. Some of these ruts go up inclines, across jagged ground, through curves no fixed axle cart could possibly navigate. And if this were a simple transport system, why would they carve hundreds of tracks? Why so deep? Why so many? And here's a thought I can't shake. If you were part of a civilization facing rising waters, if you knew the world was about to be drowned, what would you leave behind? Maybe you'd leave something in stone, something durable, something mysterious, something like this.
The fact that we're standing in what looks like a quarry tells me that rock was sliced out of here and then maybe dragged, and through the dragging process creating these lines, but probably wheels. We don't give our ancient civilizations enough credit. And when I say ancient civilizations, I mean the civilizations that came more than 12,500 years ago, before Göbekli Tepe, before then, because that's when I think modern civilization was reset. And I'm pretty sure that this is older than Göbekli Tepe, because it's thousands and thousands and thousands of years old, but they just don't know how, because you can't carbon date stone. And there's no remnants. Just because troglodytes, cave dwellers, lived in the surrounding areas post this doesn't mean they were responsible for this. It means the people that came before them were responsible. Just in the same way that when you see people moving into abandoned skyscrapers and you can see their graffiti, doesn't mean that they were responsible for that skyscraper. It just means they've moved in post the people that put it up. Interesting, this one is as big as the one in the first original site. Look at this. So it's depending on what line you find. This is the line. Look at this size. It's about exactly the same. And this one's deep. We go like down here. That is a good half a foot down from the original. Very deep. And I know it's two lines, because this one here is the second line. It's been filled in with debris, but it still leads down in that direction. It's fascinating.
As strange as Malta's cart ruts are, they're not entirely unique. Similar tracks have been found in places like Sardinia, southern Spain, and even parts of Turkey, including near ancient sites like Hattusa and Cappadocia. Some of them also run along rocky plateaus, and like here, they crisscross in no clear pattern. But none of them are as dense, as defined, or as perplexing as what we find here in Malta. And perhaps nowhere else do they sit so deliberately beside another mystery. Because just a few kilometers away are the megalithic temples of Malta, Gigantia, Hagakim, Mandria. These aren't just old. Some say they are older than the pyramids, although I'm going to question that, and that's for another video. Some say they're older than Stonehenge. That I do believe. Built potentially 5,500 years ago, we're told these structures were the work of simple farming communities, and yet the precision, the scale, the alignment with celestial bodies, it all suggests something more. A culture that understood engineering, astronomy, and possibly something else. but this video is about the cart ruts. I will go over the temples in a later video. Were these tracks part of the same civilization? Did the temple builders create them, or did they inherit them just as we have?
You can see here, very much off the beaten tourist trail, how this one crisscrosses up there and the other one crisscrosses up there. Natural, maybe, but I think more likely man-made, thousands and thousands of years ago. They had a mission to go on. One mission was to take the goods this way, or whatever it was they were taking this way. Another one was to take the goods this way. This one is the more distinct one, and look, same size as my feet. Notice this. Same, well, maybe. Yeah, it's about, this one you could say is a little bit bigger. An inch bigger, maybe.
Graham Hancock has argued that Malta may be the tip of a submerged Ice Age civilization, and that these temples, like the Ruts, are the last surviving traces of something much older. The more you see, the harder it is to dismiss the idea that we're only scratching the surface of our human story. Mainstream history gives us tidy timelines, but the world isn't tidy. It's layered, weathered, eroded, both physically and culturally. Maybe the cart ruts are just what they seem, practical, ancient trackways, or maybe they're footprints of a lost knowledge, etched in stone before the flood came. We humans are obsessed with answers, but maybe what we need are better questions, because out here, walking amongst the scars of forgotten people, you don't find certainty, you find wonder, and in that wonder, something stirs.
Same again. Slightly smaller. Trying my best to basically go to every place on the island that has these cart ruts, but probably impossible to find them all. The remarkable thing is they are everywhere, and where the modern meets the old has vanished, because as you can see, the cart ruts would have gone off and then they would have gone that way towards the sea, and now obviously bulldozed, modernism has taken over, basically no more. But it is fascinating. Maybe they were trying to take whatever they found inland out to sea. That's a possibility. Well, the last one on my journey towards the north side of the island of Malta, just before I head on over on the ferry to Gozo, fooled me. Some stonies or alkies, some comedians probably sat here as they're having a bit of a drink and a laugh and a smoke. They go, I know, let's bring some tourists down to here. You know what? I kind of thought it might be a great way to end the video. Ending the video with the cart ruts going out to sea, but turns out it's just effectively they've taken a picture of boat moorings going out to sea. You notice there's some boats over here. I really wanted it to be true. There is limestone down here, so you know, potentially it could be true. Am I just gonna give up? Maybe we've all been, you know what? They weren't lying. There is limestone down here, and there are some cart ruts just here. I generally thought someone was winding. There we are. They're exactly the same. So in a way, ending it at the sea is a nice fitting place. The next video is going to be on Gozo, I think, or maybe it will be on something else, but I'm heading to Gozo next. Hopefully you enjoyed this exploration into the cart ruts of Malta.
I came to Malta to follow a trail, one carved in stone. What I found was a puzzle that refuses to be solved, and maybe that's the point. Maybe some mysteries exist not to be solved, but to remind us that we've forgotten more than we remember, that beneath every step we take lies a story waiting to be heard. I'm the Wondering Englishman, and I'll see you in the next video.
In this blood, there's no alibi, 'cause I've drawn regret